webinar has opened.
Welcome everyone. We're just going to take a second to get everyone into the room. Thank you for joining us today. You can see the attendee list quickly going from up to 480 to 500 already. Just another minute while everyone gets into the room. I'm going through the attendees list and seeing a lot of familiar names, so thank you for joining. It looks like from all across the province today. Okay, I think let's get going. There's still some filtering in, but we want to take use all the time as possible. My name is Jared Cope. I am the Director of Provincial Activation at Via Sport, and I'd like to also introduce Charlene Kripikavich, the CEO of Via Sport, who's joining us today, as well as Rebecca Tunnicliffe, who is the CEO of BCRPA, British Columbia Parks Recreation Association. Thank you for being here. I know that there's a lot of questions that you want to see answered today, and that's our hope, is to answer as many as possible, give as much clarity as possible. It's been a big week in return to sports, and so this is another step in our path back to sport, and that's exciting. I'm excited to share some of those details, even though that there's still going to be gray, and I want to say that up front, that we're still working through gray, but that's okay. We're gonna get there. I would like to just quickly go through the agenda. We're gonna get Charlene to kick us off, and then from there we're gonna get into more of the details of return to sport and set the context, and then share what that plan is. So we'll get into those details. And then from there, we're connecting sport and municipalities. We need facilities for sport to operate, and facilities need sport for them to operate. And we are a true partner in all this. So we're going to get an update and share from BCRPA, as well as then get into the questions. Thank you so much for submitting your questions. We had over 100 questions submitted over the weekend. Into today. So thank you so much for submitting those. You can also go into the function at the bottom of the Zoom. So there's a question and answer function at the bottom. You can ask questions through that function as well. And we have people behind the scenes monitoring them. So please submit your questions. We want to see them. We want to see what you are working with right now. Without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to Charlene.
All right. Well, thank you, Jared. This is very exciting, and so pleased to see people dialing in from all points around the province. So thank you so much for joining this webinar. I'm Charlene Kripikavich, CEO of Via Sport, and it's really an honor to be here. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm dialing in from the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. I'm really blessed to share these lands with our First Nations communities and to work with you to advance greater reconciliation through sport. So I'd like to thank you all for attending today. This is exciting, an exciting day, June 1st. And I'd also like to thank you for your incredible resilience these past 15 months as we've navigated this global pandemic. These have been very, very challenging times for sport as we've navigated difficulties in the various restrictions. But here we are on June 1st to begin to talk about restarting sport in our communities. I'm grateful to have Via Sport and BCRPA co-host this webinar today to ensure that you get as much information as you need from our leaders in sport and recreation. Once again, we're embarking on a period of change. It's a slow turning of the flywheel to reboot our sport ecosystem. So it's going to take all of us to come together and support this change. And I'm certain that, we'll find some bumps and along the way, but we will get there. Let's continue to be resilient, collaborative, and supportive of each other as we navigate this phase. thank you again for your leadership, your passion and dedication to sport and recreation in this province. We're almost there. We're in the final huddle, in the final quarter. And, so let's stay focused on the shot clock and work as a team to get our sport and recreation back up and running in our communities. So I'm really excited for this webinar, and I know that Jared and Rebecca will do a great job in answering your questions. And thank you again for dialing in and being so committed to sport and recreation in our communities. Back to you, Jared.
Thank you, Charlene. Let's move on to the next slide. And I already seen your questions flowing in, so thank you for those. Please keep submitting them. You can find the question and answer function at the bottom. So I want to start by setting a little bit of the context. What a wild year, and or 15, 16 months that we've been in. And to think of what the conversations we were having last year this time to where we were in the fall, to the start of the restart, there's been a lot of shifts, and it's been quite complicated. And so I want to set a little bit of context to shed some light into how we are operating today based off where we've come from. If you can remember, we released guidelines almost a year to date. Our first guidelines were released last May. Those took us through the summer, and then we released our phase 3 guidelines in late August. So those were for our phase 3 guidelines. It was a 43-page document. There was a lot of detail within and throughout, and that is what really supported you in making your decisions about how to move forward. We had cohorts in it. We had groups A, B, and C for sports. We had detailed plans within, and it was really helpful within the phase that we were. That shifted in later into the fall when we moved to November, when our case count went up. The gathering and events order, the public health order, became what needed to guide us and restrict us. So when that public health order came in November, we weren't using our VIA Sport guidelines. We were being restricted by that order from public health. In that order, we really focused on travel, contact, a little bit around indoor and outdoor, and differentiating adult and youth. Now, since November, that has really been what has governed us in sport, in the sports sector. So, up until recently, that has been the focal point. From there, there's been other restriction put in place. We had additional travel restrictions that were placed in our third wave, so late in March, where additional measures were in place beyond the public health order. Now that has gotten us to where we were last week. In last Tuesday, the provincial government announced their restart plan. Their restart plan, which we're really happy about, that they had clearly articulated a place for sport and physical activity within their plan. It was also a very high-level document that was then our job at VIA Sport and the sector, working with government in a lot of different ministries, as well as public health and the regional health authorities, was to come up with a bit more detail to help the sector restart as well within those steps. So that is where we are today. Is now we are working under the BC Restart Plan with the public health order still in place. Moving forward is really more about it being a centralized, restricted model, and more so towards a decentralized model where more decision-making will be on the provincial sport organizations, the municipalities, the local sport organizations as well. So if we can go to the next slide, that'd be great. What I would like to focus on here is within this shift, it's not always going to be black and white. In our plan, when I said that our documents a year ago and our guidelines a year ago, 43 pages, what we're going to share with you today is 2 pages. The shift in the restart, as you saw, from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4 is quite quick. There's really not a lot of time in between steps. There's going to be a lot of gray within that. And we know that we need to be able to shift quickly, because what's going to be relevant today is going to be not relevant in very short order. And again, to reiterate that we're really shifting from via sport and the government to have those restrictions and be centralized towards more autonomy within the clubs. So I think this is a great opportunity for your organizations to think about where you've come from, how you made decisions, a year ago and throughout the pandemic to where we are coming out of it. And I know that you are all, I don't want to sound like you need to be doing this or you need to be doing that, but with this shift, there is a difference in roles and responsibilities going forward. Your boards are going to have to play a role in making some decisions that aren't going to be as clear cut as potentially they were before. How you communicate with your members, there's going to be a shift in that you're going to have to be making some decisions instead of it being waiting for clearly articulated from via sport, as well as just working with the different stakeholders, those being the provincial sport organizations or the municipalities, and others. Behind the scenes, the provincial sport organizations are working really hard. So are the municipalities to understand exactly what's coming and build out plans, because no one really had time as the restart plan was announced a week ago. So there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes, and there's going to be a lot of conversations with a lot of gray coming up. So I guess I'm asking you to rethink. It's an opportunity to rethink of how you're going to be doing this work, knowing that it's going to be less centralized and more so autonomous as we move forward. Can we go to the next slide? Saying that, this is what I'd like to do is introduce you to our restart, our return to sport restart 2.0. What we've done is taken the restart plan from the BC government and also worked very closely over the last week to get clarity on exactly what they meant within different parts of the order and their plan. So I want to highlight a few things. I know, and I'll also start by saying you can go to viasport.ca. This is now live on our website, and you can see it in more detail. You can also blow it up and make it bigger. So if you want to, you can go to viasport.ca and find this on our website. It is now live if you want to follow along while I'm sharing in this presentation. Within step 1, there was a lot of details that we're trying to figure out. We have been working again over the last week very closely with health and trying to solidify some of that direction. Some of those are, and I want to say the big ticket, the things that have changed, there are no cohorts. So we have been thinking about cohorts and that we'd be coming back to cohorts. There are no cohorts in this plan. The other piece is that when we talked about group A, B, C, and D sports before, that is no longer. What we're focusing on is outdoor sport, indoor sports, and also high performance. So that is our focus. And within outdoor sport and indoor sport, we have levers that are used to control and how we ease back into sport. So we know from public health that they want to still restrict travel. We know that outdoor is safer than indoor, and we know that we still want to limit contact where possible. So within that, outdoor sport, we know that you can do more. So that's where we've moved forward within step 1. You are now allowed to have contact on the field of play, off the field of play, maintain 2 meters. You can travel to your home club, and that has been clarified by public health. I want to make that clear that this is within the public health order, that sport is still limited to the home club. And we have that definition on our website as well of what home club means. But this isn't a via sport directive on top of the order. This is straight from public health that you can only travel to your home club at this time. We also know that the maximum group size for adults and varsity sport is 50. And if there's a mix of adult and youth, you should still be using the 50-person maximum. There is no maximum group size for youth sport at this time. So that allows for a little bit more flexibility if you needed a bit more adult supervision or coaches on the field, etc. So there is no group size, a maximum for youth, and there are no spectators at this time for outdoor. Indoor sport, those are the same restrictions that we had before May 25th. So there's still 3 meters of physical distance required for children and adults on field of play. Children and youth, you're not limited, but you still have to maintain those three meters of distance at all times. Adult sport is limited to 2 people within an indoor setting. There are no spectators and travel to home club only. Within that home club, you also cannot travel across the 3 zones, the zones that have been put in place. That's the Lower Mainland, so Fraser Health, Vancouver Coastal, Vancouver Island, and then also the interior and northern region. For high performance, those Sport Canada funded athletes are able to travel because they are considered a worker, so they can travel within the 3 zones, so they can travel across BC. Canadian Sport Institute Pacific identified athletes who are not Sport Canada carded can train, travel, and compete within those travel zones. So that, again, those are the 3 zones that are within BC. Let's move on to the next step. Oh, actually, sorry. And this is the next part of the document. When you are building out your safety plans or re-looking at your safety plans, we want you to use links that are relevant for you instead of it being within our guidance. So you can go to WorkSafe BC for their templates. For sanitization, you can go to the BC Center for Disease Control to look at their website for up-to-date information. This way it'll stay as frequent and up-to-date as possible because there will be frequent changes coming up. We also, you can link to the VIA Sport frequently asked questions. You can go to the frequently asked questions for more details about within the steps and our restart plan. So for more details, you can always go to that page as well. Let's move to the next slide. What I want to also say is that in our overall plan, we are focusing on step 1 right now. We needed to get this information out the door, and this is where we're trying to provide as much clarity for you to get back on the fields as fast as possible. So that is the focus. But saying that, we are starting to work with health and other agencies to understand what sport will look like for step 2, 3, and 4. What our plan is for this document is going to be on our website. It's going to be a living document. It's going to be evolving quickly and shifting quickly. So as we learn more information about step 2, we'll be filtering in this information as quick as possible. So please keep this up to date by going to our website and not keeping the stagnant document with you. Or printing it out. If you do print it out, please go to our website. It's going to continuously be updated. So for what we know right now for step 2, we know that indoor sport is going to be shifting forward quite a bit. And we know that is being really restricted right now, but we do want to move it forward. So that will be a really big step for indoor sport as we go into step 2. We also know that travel will be increased across sport. So, we've heard loud and clear that we want to, that you want to travel more. That will be in for step 2. again, more information will be about step 3 and step 4 in the coming days, weeks ahead. Let's move to Rebecca. Rebecca, I would love for you to talk about the connection between sport and municipalities and some of the work that you and all of your crew are doing on your side.
Great, thanks, Jared. So hi, everybody. I see a lot of familiar names as well. And there's just a few key points I really want to share so that everyone kind of understands the position of municipalities vis-a-vis sport. So fundamentally, we're really excited, all the local governments are, to restore sport in the province, in our spaces and on our spaces. And sport is an integral part of our community experience. So it's what we dedicate much of our time to. And everyone in their local municipality and their local government is readying for sport. So as VIA Sport is keeping the PSOs and LSOs and DSOs informed, so BCRPA is keeping all of our member municipalities. And all municipalities that have recreation or parks departments are members of BCRPA. So each municipality, each local government is moving at their own pace. So we talked about this in the first slowdown or shutdown. And then as we slowly emerged, there was some impatience in some municipalities, like, why can't we do this sport right now on this space? And in other municipalities, well, you know, we're not ready to go back into that space just yet. So there's quite a differentiation amongst all the municipalities, of which there are 104. With parks and recreation departments, and they each have different influences that are affecting their ability to move as quickly as our announcement last Tuesday would allow us. So none of us were expecting sport to kind of open up so quickly, which is really exciting. But what that means is there are staffing issues, staffing resources that we have to manage, recalling staff back who were laid off, and recalling staff who are redeployed to other departments. There's also financial resource considerations, because COVID has had a big impact on revenues, but also expenses have increased. So there's a real financial pressure that wasn't there before the pandemic, and that needs to be managed for the most expensive things, resources in a community, which are our indoor spaces and all of our outdoor spaces. And also there's a balancing of priorities for residents. What does the majority of the residency want opened and when? And what are people ready for? And one of the fourth considerations is equity and inclusion. The pandemic has been most difficult on those with low income, those with disabilities, those that don't have access to the internet to do a pre-booking. There's all kinds of ways in which we haven't been able to address equity and inclusion in the way that is important to us as municipalities because of the restrictions of the pandemic. So these are the 4 main things that influence the readiness of each municipality to open their spaces. And can I have the next slide, please? So what I want you to know is that all of the municipalities are very well informed. And we've worked really hard this past year to ensure that you, as the sport enthusiasts and the sport organizations, are coming into our spaces knowing that we're completely well informed about what our requirements are, what the PHO expectations are, and what we're able to do and not to do. And BCRPA and VIA Sport have formed an alliance that we've never seen before. So it's one of the silver linings of the pandemic that we work lockstep with each other to keep each other informed about the restrictions, the easings, and the needs of community sport. And as I said, municipalities are very eager, as are the PSOs and recreational players, to see sport thriving again in our public spaces. And we've been able to develop a very powerful network of senior leaders amongst the province. And what this means for you as a sport is that no matter what community your players go in, the same understanding exists. So we know exactly what's happening in small communities and in large communities. We have regular Zoom meetings of the top 100 senior leaders throughout the province. And we offer BCRPA immediate interpretation of the guidelines to the entire sector. So when Dr. Henry makes a pronouncement, we look at what does this mean for recreation? And of course, there's much more to recreation than sports. So our members are very, very well informed about how their spaces can be used. And they know what some of the leading practices are or trailing practices and what they can learn from one another. And what this means for you is that there's a uniformity of understanding and a unified voice. We're a much stronger sector because of this storm we've gone through and continue to go through. But we've developed very strong alliances within our sector and with partners like VS Sport. So that's the foundation of where we're coming from, is that we know what we're doing and we're each going at a slightly different pace. So some excitement and patience is required. Over to you, Jared.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm going to bring Heather in to ask some of the questions that have been submitted to both Rebecca and myself.
Hang on, here we go. Hi, everyone. We've had over 75 questions coming in throughout the presentation. So what that means is that unfortunately we may not get to every specific one, but I think there's a lot of themes that hopefully we'll be able to address. I think there was a number of questions about specific links to these documents. So I think you can now should be able to access that through the chat box. And I believe there will also be a communication that goes out following this webinar that will have all of those links for you directly in that email. Just maybe we start from the perspective of contact. I know this came up in the chart that no cohorts are allowed, but can we just clarify, or needed, just clarify from an indoor perspective as well as from an outdoor perspective what contact is allowed?
Contact is allowed on the field of play. I'm going to mute you. I can get a little bit of feedback. Contact is allowed on the field of play for outdoor sport, while off the field of play still need to maintain that 2 meters of physical distance. This is another step of having some of that limited contact while still being able to mitigate some of the risk off the field. So this is another step forward. For indoor sport, there is no contact at this time. So 3 meters of physical distance need to be maintained while on the field of play for indoor sport, and it's 2 meters off the field of play. And that is what is for step 1, and that will be progressing through step 2, 3, and 4 as we move forward for contact.
Great, thank you. Similarly, I think there's a number of questions around the max gathering size. So can we maybe start by just clarifying indoor? What does that mean for youth versus adult?
Yeah, it's a maximum of 50 for adults. But they have to maintain. No, I actually got that completely wrong. For outdoors, for outdoors, I'm making this clear. For outdoors, it is a maximum of 50 for adults while on the field of play. From when you go off the field of play, it's governed by the other parts of the public health order where there's a maximum gathering of 10. So if I'm playing my sport and then I move off the field and I'm going to a social setting, then you're only allowed 10. If you're off the field to play because you're sitting on the sideline, you're waiting, that's still part of sport. But when you move into a social setting, it is still only a maximum of 10. There is no maximum for children and youth for outdoor sports at this time. And that is to allow more flexibility for additional support for those types of programs. For indoor sports, you are only allowed up to 2 adults to play a sport at one time. So there's no changes for sport for indoor for adult, and same thing for children and youth. You have to maintain 3 meters of physical distance at all times. but there's no maximum, but you still have to maintain 3 meters of physical distance.
So just to clarify, there may be a facility maximum based on the space that you're working with in order to maintain that distance.
Absolutely.
And then just going back to the outdoors, you spoke to the youth, no maximum in the allowance of adult supervision, I think is the language in the chart. And there's some confusion there around what's the difference between adult supervision and spectators.
Yeah, and it's a great question, Heather, because this is where there's going to be calls at your discretion. We see the chart, we know the intent of the chart, and we know that it's going to be more and more decision making back to the sports and within that, we know that there's supposed to be no spectators. So if you want to disguise it as supervision as spectators, that's not the intent. So I go back to the intent of the order and what our chart is and make decisions within then, but we're not going to have all the details of every single scenario, especially with how fast things are shifting. So my answer to that is you're gonna have to look at the situation and make a call.
There's some similar questions related to volunteers and officials. So I think that's where that comes in. Like those are specific, those people have specific roles within the sport environment. So it allows for them without too many limitations being put on those individuals.
Yeah, and we heard loud and clear from everyone that they wanted more flexibility to allow for those types of events to happen. They're still small scale, but they needed more officials or referees or volunteers for those younger ones. And so this allows some of that flexibility.
There's a number of questions around the competitions that are allowed. I think in step 1, it already speaks to the allowance for competitions, mainly meaning gameplay. But can you speak to maybe that difference between the competition versus like a tournament, or what factors might people need to consider in step 1 and as we progress?
Yeah, and I know that the government website does say tournaments, and I know that we're all excited to get back to play and to be in tournaments in those settings, and that we all love, and I love that type of competition. But we need to do it in step. And so right now we are still limited to our home clubs. We are limited to a size of 50 for adults, and that all needs to be considered with the scale of event or competition that you want to have. So if you want to call it a tournament and it's 4 teams and it's very clearly marked of where they are playing, and it's over whatever it may be that works within what we've provided today, then absolutely that works. The other part of it is what Rebecca just said. Everyone is trying to ramp up and get back onto the field and open up access, but it doesn't mean that we're going to have that large scale right now. Those are going to come in later steps. So it's not a clear answer of what competition means versus tournament. You're going to have to make those calls, but you have to ground it in what we've talked about and discussed today.
I think to that point, Jared, the idea that right now play or travel kind of restricts your ability also of what types of competitions you're hosting, right? Absolutely.
So travels to home club only. I was going through some of the questions. The home club is right in the gathering and events order. So this isn't something that VIA Sport has put on. This is a directive in the public health order that home club force is limited. Travel for sport is limited to the home club.
There's a few questions that are coming up around mask use. So this may be for both you and Rebecca. I think, Jared, you could speak overarching to the mask use on the field, and then Rebecca, if you want any facility specific statements that you want to make.
Yes, the one of our links in the chart that we provided today is on our website is to the order around mask use. In that order, for sport, you do not need to use a mask while on the field of play for sport. Saying that while you are off the field of play, especially for an indoor setting, yes, you need to wear a mask. And for outdoor sport, what we suggest is for you should be wearing a mask off the field of play, because there is a larger group of people coming together in that setting and are still going to be really close in contact. So that's, from a sport perspective, that's our direction.
I'll just add that one of the things that changed with the mask order was indoor fitness. So masks are now required for indoor individual and group fitness. Group fitness just having started last week. And of course, that doesn't apply to pools, and arenas are also exempt. So it's not very straightforward, but what we know for sure is that any indoor space, you must wear a mask. And the new requirement as of about 6 weeks ago is masking for indoor exercise. And now that group fitness is open again, it does pertain to group fitness as well.
So this shows the clarity is always not there. So just to be clear, as much as we can, for a sport, you do not need a mask while on the field of play. In a fitness setting, you do. For on the field while actually engaged in the activity.
Thank you. Similar to that, we were getting a number of questions related to safety plans. Are safety plans still required? I think Rebecca could probably speak to from a facility usage perspective, and Jared again generally, as well as certain aspects of what may or may not be required within those plans.
Sure, I could take a stab at this. And one of the things I really wanted to emphasize too is that VIA Sport and BCRPA are on the advisory committee to the PHO. And this is one of the topics that we're currently discussing. What does the lifting of restrictions mean for safety plans? And eventually we won't need a safety plan. Those days are coming very soon. But for the moment, what we need is for municipalities is to know that the sport has an understanding of the current restrictions and have systems in place to ensure that there are no spectators right now until mid-June, just a couple of weeks from now, and that all the other health-related requirements for sport, that your PHO, LSO, DSO is adhering to those, and that we know that you're doing that. But those safety plans are going to be presumably much simpler than they were a week ago.
Rebecca, you put that very well. And I think the only thing I want to add to it is that this is changing quickly. And so we understand that. And so, yes, we need safety plans right now, but we want it to be pared down to where it was a week ago to what is really necessary right now. So within the chart, what is that we've outlined, those are necessary steps that you need to take. And so building that into the safety plan is a good idea. The PSOs are also working hard to provide guidance for sport specific safety plans. And so continue to work together on it, continue to work with the municipalities on what is necessary, what would be something that would be useful for an LSO to move forward and not be a make work project as well. The other part I want to say is when we used to provide templates and a lot more guidance, it's now you can go to WorkSafe BC, you can go to BC CDC and get their guidance on their overall safety plans and some of the details that should be within as well. So you can use those resources.
Heather, can I just mention something as well? There's two other related factors. One is cleaning. I noticed that was a question on the Q&A, and the time between events or sports. So those are two of the very early restrictions. We all improved our cleaning and ramped that up significantly, both indoors and outdoors, and have a gap between groups, definitely indoors. So by the time we get to indoors in a couple of weeks, some of those requirements will lift. And we know that there's emerging evidence on how the virus is transmitted, and the aerosol factor of high touch surfaces, and really what's going to be most important is ventilation. So outdoor is less of an issue, obviously. And so that will mean in time, maybe sooner than later, we won't have to put in those buffer periods between groups coming in, and we won't need to have the same scrutiny on high touch surfaces and hand sanitation available and so on. So that's emerging evidence, and definitely something that SFRAC is talking about and looking at. When can we start lifting some of those requirements?
And just for a little bit more context, SSFRAC is the Safer Sport Fitness Recreation Advisory Committee. So VIA Sport, BCRPA, the regional health authorities, public health, Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture and Sports, Ministry of Education and Health. We all work together to provide, look at how to move sport forward and recreation forward. So that's that committee.
Thanks both. We do have another question around approval. So I think some sports or individuals are asking about, is it required to get approval from the municipality in order to return? I'm assuming that it depends on whether you're using the municipality's facility or not, but maybe I'll let you speak to that.
So what the municipality wants to know is that your sport is following the current guidelines. So that's where the sports need to be very much in alignment with VIA Sport guidelines. So what we don't know about steps 2, 3, and 4 are a whole lot of things. So, and I've done a chart similar to the VIA Sport chart on all the things that are impacted in recreation and parks for the next few phases. And most of those categories are to be determined. We just don't know. So if you're a sport that's trying to book something for August and the municipality is saying, just can you wait? We don't know what we're going to be able to do by then and how the scheduling will work, how close we can have groups together, what the numbers will be. It's because we just need to be patient and wait a couple more weeks until public health gives us more clear guidelines about what we can expect in the months ahead. Certainly for the 2 weeks that we're in right now till the middle of June, when we hope the step 2 will start, we know what we can do. But I think most sports are looking to their summer, not the next 2 weeks. So there are things that none of us know. And that's why if you're working with a municipality that says, I'll pencil you in, great. But that may or may not work to what you're hoping for, to what we're all hoping for. So that's why we're just needing to be patient and see what emerges in the next 2 weeks.
Was I supposed to answer a question?
Yeah, only if you had further thoughts.
Oh, I'm good.
Yeah, so I think just to summarize there, it's not specific approval, but if you're working within the municipal facilities, they will be looking for alignment of your plans to the current guidance or restrictions. Yeah.
And I should actually add something. What I'd like to add is that we aren't going to be approving plans. We aren't approving plans, and it depends on the relationship and the governance structure between the provincial sport organization, the local sport organization, and how you are working in that space. So I'm not going to say that you need to get your plan approved. That's your relationship with the provincial sport organization.
Maybe you could speak a little bit more to the role of the PSO and what guidance maybe they will be able to provide to the sport specific question.
Yeah, and that's your connection to the sport specific questions is the provincial sport organization. We meet all the time. We are trying to VIA Sport keep them up to date as much as possible. And they are working tirelessly behind the scenes to turn a very large set of restrictions into something that works sport specific within their context. So reach out to them, but also know that they are working and as tirelessly as possible to get those to you as quick as possible.
Great. Shifting back to the indoor versus outdoor. We had the question if you're traditionally do your sport inside and you're able to move that to an outdoor facility, does that mean then you're able to follow the outdoor guidelines?
Yes. So it doesn't matter what traditionally your sport is. It matters of where it takes place, because that's what COVID reacts to is more indoor than outdoor. So if you are in traditionally indoor sport and you move outdoor, you follow the outdoor restrictions.
Thank you. Maybe can you speak a little bit to high performance athletes? Sure, just re-clarifying the difference between, or the definition of high performance and the difference between those Sport Canada versus CSI targeted or any other group that considers themselves high performance.
Yeah, and I understand this is confusing, and there are a lot of high performance programs out there that don't fall under the CSI carded list. This came from November when public health wanted something to point to for how we define high performance. That is through the Canadian Sport Institute Pacific. So any athlete, a targeted athlete on that list is exempt from the gathering and events order. So they are able to travel, compete, and train within BC. I want to clarify then that the added restriction on travel in March, where we are limited to 3 zones, that made it so only the Sport Canada carded athletes that so Sport Canada carded that are paid workers were able to travel all around BC, whereas the other identified athletes from CSIP that aren't Sport Canada had to stay within those 3 zones. No, we anticipate that will change for step 2, where there will be provincial travel restrictions lifted. That will allow for more travel for high performance programs under Canadian Sport Institute Pacific. I understand that there's other programs. I get messages and PSOs are talking to me all the time about other programs that are deemed as high performance. We have to wait. We have to wait until we get into future steps to be able to allow that traffic. And I also want to, there are, when it comes to travel, there are those groups that are restricted more than others. And it's really unfortunate. And those are those smaller communities that only have 1 team, those programs that are more high performance where they need to travel more to get that same level of competition, those smaller sports that you have to travel a bit more because you just don't have access to the same competition. I know that you are restricted more than other sports, but what public health and explicitly said to us and didn't want to see is big groups of people still traveling together from community to community. And that is why sport is being restricted to home club for a little bit longer. And then we'll be opening up very soon and to allow for more. What that looks like, we're working right now. We're right now on those details and trying to get that to you as soon as possible. But we also know that with steps, we don't usually, when a next announcement from government is, we don't always have a lot of time when that's officially announced. So we're going to try to give you as much time as possible, but that's not, it really depends on government and when they're going to get us that information.
Thanks, Jared. And can we just pause on the home club concept a little bit? I think some people are looking for the actual definition just to have a better understanding of what home club actually means.
That means I should probably have the actual definition right in front of me. Well, 1 second. Home club. I'm taking this definition right from the public health order that is still current. So this is still written right into the public health order. And that the home club means the sport organization, club, or facility with or at which a person is registered for ongoing sport programming. So that's the definition of a home club.
There are some comments or questions related to sports that don't traditionally have a home club or a home facility. They're more registering with a league. How does that factor into that?
I'm glad you just asked, because I wanted to clarify that too. So thanks for the question, Heather. This is a great area, and and this is an opportunity for you go to the intent of what we've talked about today, is to limit that travel of groups from community to community. So if you are a league and that is your home club, and you're always at the same facility, so it could be the Abbotsford Slow Pitch League. If you are always at the same facility and you're playing at that facility and then you go home, that makes sense that league is your home club. If your league is drawing teams from all over the interior, and so you're traveling from Kamloops and Penticton to Osoyoos or Summerland and coming to different communities, if that's your league, then no, you shouldn't be traveling at this time. And your home club would be more so your community. Is there gray within this? Yes. You're going to have to make judgment calls as well. And there's going to be more and more of that as we go forward. So that's what I'd like you to consider as you're making some of the decisions.
What about, I guess, can you clarify from an individual perspective, their ability to participate in multiple sports or therefore travel to multiple home clubs?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that we've eased with this step is the ability to have more contact. And that's a great step. And so what that's allowed is you to be able to be part of more clubs. So, I know previously that we were limiting by cohorts and you needed to stay within those cohorts. And now that that's removed, you are able to go to more than one home club. And it should stay, it should be local. We still want you to be staying as local as possible, but yes, you can be in more than one home club.
Thank you. We have some questions around a varsity sport and what's allowed related to varsity sport. Can you just provide some clarity there?
Yeah, and varsity sport is also written in the gathering and events order. So they will need to follow the same as children and youth. So for outdoor sport, they can have contact. For indoor sport, they still need to maintain physical distance of 3 meters. And so so similar to youth within our guidance that we just put out is for varsity sport, but they're written right into the events order as well.
Thank you. There's some other questions around clarification of the field of play. So I think there's some running activities where the field of play could be quite large, or water sports where you might be doing your sport in the ocean, as well as even the dugout versus bench idea at a soccer or baseball field. Is anything or guidance that you could provide there?
Yeah, you're gonna have to make some judgment calls. For the ocean, I think you're pretty safe. So I think that one's pretty safe. For benches, yes, they can be included into the field of play. Do our change rooms? No, I don't think so. At this time, that will be in future steps. And there's going to be within that, there's going to be more gray. So consider your space, consider your sport, and if your group needs a clear definition of that field of play, take all the factors, everything we've talked about within the chart, and need to make a judgment call.
Yeah, I think there's a few, it depends what the question is also trying to answer. If it's about the gatherings, like where is the sport gathering? And if it's about the mask use, that factors into facility-based things as well. So Rebecca, anything you wanted to add there?
I think one of the differences is between individual activity, like if you go swimming, or if you're going for a skate, or if you're going for a workout. Those are not sports, those are individual activities. So the occupancy is limited by the requirements of the PHO for how many people can be in the pool and or on the ice. So these are not 50-person limited events like a sport or an organized gathering. These are business as usual for recreation. So it's more the matter of occupancy limits, and those are going to be easing in the weeks ahead. I did also notice a question about someone mentioned they have a pool in the middle of a park, and you know, what are the limits there? Well, if you were, say, having a sporting event in your pool, you'd be governed by the space defined by that public space of the pool. You could have 1,000 people in the park surrounding it, following public health guidelines, but your domain is that aquatic space.
Great, thanks. In previous kind of phases or areas over the last 6 months, there has been very defined adult sport, youth sport, and there's still a little bit of that. I think the question is surfacing around, can adult and youth participate in sport together? And how does that maybe impact any of the restrictions?
Is another great question. The answer is for you would still need to put on the restrictions for what is for adult. So you can't have a group of adults join what would be deemed as a youth program and they count as youth. So example for right now, outdoor, the gathering and events says that is up to 50 people. If there's a mix of children and adults in that program, they would need to adhere to that gathering limit of 50. So take that into consideration if you have a mixed group.
Great. I see that we're coming up on time. So I do have 2 more quick questions, and then I'll hand it back to you to wrap it up. One is around coach education courses. Are you able to speak to where they might be able to refer to guidance for that?
Yeah, I think let's make sure that that's in VIA Sports FAQs and update that language within. So check in with our FAQs, maybe not right now, but soon, and we'll have those answers.
And then my last question, there's still lots of questions on clarification for future phases. I know you addressed we don't have all the answers yet, but maybe how will people be able to find out those answers as we get those details?
Our newsletter is best. We once we have those decisions, and we're going to share out in all of our platforms through social media, through our newsletter, and through our partners. Our PSOs are going to be the first to know. Rebecca and I talk twice a day, it seems like. So we're working to get this information out as soon as possible, as soon as we get clarity. So those channels are our best. I think I think we'll be able to share all these resources. They are in our plan. They are on our website. I know the link was shared in the chat. Knowing that we have a minute before we're wrapping up, Rebecca, is there anything else that you want to say before we close?
I think putting a perspective that this is just a month that we need to get through with these restrictions, and then all goes well, July will be a new day for us, and that as the field is evolving very quickly, we're trying to keep up, but there are certain things that we know are in place for a few more weeks. So the dawn is coming. Yeah, and I think I'd like to reiterate that too. I know that there's still a lot of unknowns and frustration, but we are able to do more than we did 8 days ago, and that will only progress over the next while, and that's really exciting. And so I'm excited to see sport come back. I know that there's frustration within, but there's also a lot of good. And last thing I want to say is just thank you to everyone from all that you're doing to keep sport going and moving forward, for those participants to be able to play,
the PSOs, the LSOs, to the municipalities, the people behind the scenes, the team at Via Sport that put so much work into getting all this information clearly put together, and really raising your concerns to health to get solved for. Everyone, we're collectively needing to do this to go forward. And I'm really excited to see the next time that we talk and what that's going to look like, and what we get to talk about it then, and what's on the field of play at that time. We're right at 1. Thank you everyone so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll hope to see you soon.
Just a reminder, you can always email info@viasport.ca if we weren't able to address your questions, and the frequently FAQs document will continue to be updated with questions from this call and future questions as we move forward.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye, Jared. Bye, Heather.